The scenery at the top of the Himalayas is not as peaceful as it seems. Behind the beauty of the world's highest peaks, there is a danger lurking in silence. A threat that could endanger billions of lives across Asia. The melting of the third pole. The third pole is not a term that many people are familiar with. Most of us are probably only familiar with the two poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. A place where eternal ice resides, as well as a place of unsolved mysteries. However, not many people know that there is another pole that is equally important, perhaps even more urgent. High in the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and the Tibetan Plateau lies the ice called the Third Pole. With over 100,000 square kilometers of glaciers, this region is home to the third largest freshwater reserve in the world after Antarctica and Arctica. This ice is not just ice, it is a water tower that sustains the lives of billions of people. The great rivers of Asia, from the Ganges that flows through India to the Yangtze that cuts through China, get their water supply from the third pole. Even the Indus, Brahmaputra, and Mekong rivers, which meander through Southeast Asian countries, all depend on this ice reserve. Without the third pole, there would be no running water. Without water, life on the world's largest continent would be paralyzed. A scenario more terrifying than any nightmare. Just like its siblings to the north and south, the third pole is dying. Global warming, the invisible enemy that has long terrorized the Earth, is beginning to eat away at the ice cores in the Himalayas. According to recent research, the ice at the third pole is melting at an astonishing rate. Between 2011 and 2020, glaciers in the region melted 65% faster than in the previous decade. No matter how cold it gets at the top of Everest, the reality is that the ice is melting, thinning, and will eventually disappear. The answer lies in the third pole's unique geography. The sheer height of the mountains is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the mountains absorb heat from the warm air that rises upwards. Water vapor carried by the wind carries the heat up to the highest points, forcing glaciers to start melting. At the same time, the region is warming 3 times faster than the global average. No matter how successful the world is at curbing the rate of global temperature rise, the third pole will still warm at a much higher rate. Here, at the top of the world, the dangers feel more haunting than anywhere else. Warming air is not the only enemy the third pole has to face. High in the Himalayas, the air carries not only heat, but also pollution. Black carbon, tiny particles produced by burning garbage and fossil fuels, floats through the air, carried by winds from China and India, Asia's 2 largest industrialized nations. This black carbon accumulates on the surface of ice, blanketing glaciers with a dark layer that further accelerates their melting. Instead of reflecting sunlight as clean ice does, this layer of black carbon absorbs heat, heating the glacier surface and accelerating the melting process. Every day, hundreds of tons of this black carbon continue to hit the third pole. Each tiny particle is like a tiny dagger piercing the heart of the icy mountains. And once again, the once eternal ice begins to melt, releasing unimaginable amounts of water and flowing unchecked into the valleys below. The impact of the melting third pole doesn't just stop at the uncontrolled flow of water. As the glaciers melt, the released water will flow into Asia's great rivers in unpredictable volumes. Rivers that were once a source of life are now a threat. When the flow of water is too great, these rivers will overflow, destroying villages, cities, and infrastructure along their path. Flash floods that hit with devastating force will destroy everything in their path, bringing unimaginable destruction. The catastrophe of melting glaciers is already being felt by Bangladesh, which is the country at the bottom of the river. It has worsened the situation in Bangladesh, a country already vulnerable to seasonal flooding due to its low geography. This detrimental combination has made the landmass of Bangladesh almost disappear. Bangladesh is not the only one under threat. Countries along other major Asian rivers such as India, Nepal, and Pakistan are similarly affected. Infrastructure that wasn't designed to deal with such volumes of water couldn't withstand the pressure. Bridges and roads were destroyed, dams built to control the water were badly damaged, and hundreds of thousands of people were forced to flee for safer places. Even more terrifying is the new threat created by melting glaciers, glacial lakes. When the ice melts, in addition to increasing the volume of river water, water will also collect in valleys that were once covered by ice, forming large lakes. However, these lakes are very fragile. The natural dams formed from soil and rock are not strong enough to withstand the growing volume of water. In the blink of an eye, these dams could collapse, releasing massive amounts of water that would rush down the valleys, destroying everything in its path. The catastrophic flooding from melting glaciers is just the beginning. As these glaciers disappear, the water sources that support the great rivers will also vanish. The sacred Ganges, the lifeblood of hundreds of millions of people in India, will begin to dry up. The Indus River, the backbone of agriculture in Pakistan, will run out of water. Without water flowing from the mountains, once fertile lands will turn into barren fields. Green fields will wither, and farmers dependent on irrigation will face starvation. As water begins to disappear, densely populated Asian countries will fight for every drop. Conflict between countries sharing these water resources may be inevitable. In India, Pakistan, Nepal, China, and Southeast Asian countries, water shortages will trigger a larger crisis, which may lead to war. Geo-lovers, this is not just a prediction. The disaster caused by the melting of the third pole has already begun. On a June evening in 2018, an ice avalanche from the Nanda Devi Glacier in Uttarakhand, India, caused a glacial lake near the top of the mountain to overflow. The flash floods caused by this overflow hit the valleys below. 65 people died, while hundreds more were injured and left homeless. Villages were destroyed, bridges collapsed, and roads disappeared under the water carrying rocks and debris. Villagers recounted how the water came so fast, sweeping away everything in its path in a matter of minutes. Those who survived remember the terrifying screams of those who were unable to save themselves, lost beneath the waves of destruction. In Nepal, tragedy struck in the summer of 2019 when glacier melt enlarged the Koshi River, one of the country's largest rivers. In July, flash floods hit the Koshi Valley, submerging more than 80 villages, forcing 400,000 people to flee and causing 245 deaths. The disaster left Nepal paralyzed for months as landslides blocked roads, bridges were damaged, and agricultural fields were submerged in water. The Nepalese government struggled to deal with the aftermath of the disaster, and the death toll continued to rise as many isolated residents could not be reached for rescue. Entering 2020, the Indian state of Assam witnessed massive flooding caused by melting glaciers from the Himalayas. The normally calmly flowing Brahmaputra River suddenly turned into an overflowing torrent, destroying more than 500 villages. As many as 3 million people were directly affected by the floods, with 150 people dying and thousands more losing their homes. 2021 brought even bigger and scarier disasters. In February, another major glacier avalanche occurred in Uttarakhand, India, this time in the Shamali Valley. Melting glaciers collapsed into the river, causing deadly flash floods. Within minutes, an avalanche of ice and water crashed into the valley, destroying a hydroelectric project and triggering flash floods that devastated the villages below. More than 200 people were killed, and hundreds more were missing, drowned in mud and debris. Bridges, roads, and other critical infrastructure were severely damaged. The search for victims went on for weeks, but many were never found. Flash floods didn't just hit India and Nepal. In 2022, Pakistan was the next victim. Melting glaciers in the Hindu Kush and Himalayan regions caused the Indus River to overflow with devastating force. The flood is considered one of the largest in Pakistan's history, submerging towns and villages along the river. More than 33 million people were affected, with more than 1,700 dead and 2 million homes destroyed. Pakistan, already struggling with economic problems, had to face an unimaginable humanitarian crisis. Millions of people were left homeless, and the water and food crisis further exacerbated the situation. The melting of the third pole glaciers shows no signs of slowing down. By 2023 and 2024, some regions will again be flooded by continued melting. Asia's great rivers, once a source of life, are now an imminent threat. Bangladesh, downstream of the Ganges and Brahmaputra, experienced one of the largest floods in its history in 2023. Melting glaciers from the Himalayas and unusual rainfall caused the rivers to overflow and drown coastal towns. More than 6 million people were displaced, with 500 fatalities from floods and landslides. In early 2024, an unexpected disaster occurred on the Tibetan Plateau. Glaciers in the Tibetan mountains were melting so rapidly that the volume of water in glacial lakes increased dramatically. More than 50 villages were submerged, claiming 130 lives, with many people still missing due to collapsed buildings and landslides. To make matters worse, the flash floods also damaged hydroelectric power plants in the region, causing widespread power outages. Thousands of residents were forced to evacuate, while others had to endure the cold weather without electricity. Every year, more and more disasters are recorded. By 2024, amid global efforts to curb global warming, the Himalayas continue to witness accelerated melting. Floods, landslides, water shortages, and infrastructure damage are becoming an increasingly common sight. The once dazzling iceberg peaks are now a source of constant fear in the minds of those living nearby.